Ladies and gentlemen, I come to you today bearing witness. Our sovereign of virtue has spoken. The great, the unmatched, the monarch of morality, Urban Meyer, has weighed in on the advanced scouting case with Connor Stallions and whatnot. And he, this czar of conscience, this bastion of brilliance, believes that Jim Harbaugh should be suspended by the NFL. And you know what? I think things about that. But why shouldn't the NFL suspend Jim Harbaugh? Aside from the fact that they have nothing to do with the NCAA, and also the NCAA admitted that there was no evidence tying Jim Harbaugh to anything, and, well, that seems like a fairly big reason why. But in any case, Urban Meyer, this crown bearer of righteousness, was on the Triple Option podcast recently where he referenced Jim Tressel's NFL suspension and questioned why wouldn't the league do the same thing to Jim Harbaugh? He says, and I quote, "There's this elephant in the room here that no one's talking about." I see no elephant. When Jim Tressel was fired by Ohio State, he was given a suspension. Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the National Football League, because apparently we didn't know that, came out and said that we're going to honor that suspension. Tressel went to the Colts to work in the replay room. The Colts, because of the respect they had for the NCAA, no one respects the NCAA anymore, and the suspension, suspended Jim Tressel so that he was unable to perform his duties for the first 6 games of the year. Any chance that Roger Goodell and the NFL do that to Jim Harbaugh? I don't think so, and I don't know why. Again, this emperor of integrity has spoken clearly. His words carry weight. Hold on a second. I'm getting a phone call here. Let me... Yep. No. You're joking. Alas, I shall deliver this news. Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that our moral overlord, Urban Meyer, may in fact have been coerced. His mistress made him say this.
Wah, wah, wah. Touchdown, Wolverine!
Yeah, so is it a low blow to go after Urban Meyer for having a mistress when really he doesn't actually have a mistress? He's just got, freaky with a girl at a bar who may have actually been like 30 years his junior. Anyway, the point being that Urban Meyer is not exactly someone that we should look to for moral direction. Right? I think we can all agree that he is maybe questionable in terms of some of the things that he's done on the football field and off the football field, apparently. Well, the NCAA is also questionable in terms of their judgment. And it seems like basically all of the fan bases are coming together, albeit for different reasons, and saying together that the NCAA is, for lack of a better word, full of crap. Ryan McCullough here, coming in clutch. McCullough, maybe? Coming in clutch with this list of contradictions. He tweeted out, "So much bad from the NCAA in their ruling on Michigan. I can certainly see why the appeal is taking place after looking at the official report." So it looks like he compiled this list of contradictions from the official report. I want to go through it because, as I've said, the NCAA, they have a track record of being elitist pricks. And there's no doubt in my mind that they wanted to get rid of Jim Harbaugh basically any way that they could. You can see that by the 10-year show cause, despite themselves also admitting that they had no evidence that Jim Harbaugh was linked to anything Connor Stallions was doing. The only evidence they had was that he was not complying with the investigation. Why that lands him a worse punishment than the person they said was actually cheating, I don't know. Actually, I do know. It's because they're a bunch of cowards. It's because they are a bunch of elitist douchebags who have nothing better to do than to give in to their dying stardom and try and pretend like they actually matter when they know that they don't. Their star is dying, and they know it, and that makes them sad. And so they do stupid things like contradict themselves as much as they did in this punishment. We start off. One unknown versus certain advantage. They said, the NCAA is they, the true scope and scale of the scheme, including competitive advantage, will never be known. But they also said the scheme, quote, likely provided Michigan with a competitive advantage. Not only is this an inconsistency, as he points out, this is an appeal to ignorance. Not only is this an appeal to ignorance, the fact that they say, the true scope of this will never be known, so clearly something happened. Well, no, you have to divine it, okay? Innocent until proven guilty. That's why we have that system. You're not guilty until proven innocent. Then a bunch of, who was it that said, I think it was Benjamin Franklin? Everything gets attributed back to Benjamin Franklin. Better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent person is imprisoned, I think is what it was. And it's true. The system's not perfect by any means. No one's asking for perfection because we know it's not possible. But you can't say that we can't know. It is unknowable to define just how much wrong was committed here and then accuse the person of having done wrong at all. Because at that point, everything is just subjective. You haven't defined any actual barriers. You haven't said they crossed this particular line. They just said, well, we know they crossed something. They did something bad. Well, what was it? Well, we don't know, but we know they did something. You can't do that, and you certainly can't base a punishment off of that. They said that the likely provided Michigan with a competitive advantage. Duh. I mean, as Steve Dace and Isaiah Hole have said, everybody does these types of things for a competitive advantage. You think that, okay, so filming signs from the sideline, what does that get you in the end? It gets you the signs, which is also what every other team ends up with as well, coming into the football games. That's what every other team has. So either way, both teams are starting the football game against each other with each other's signs. How they got it does not matter, because in the end, they've both got it. So yes, of course Connor Stellians did this. Everybody knows that Urban Meyer had Don Brown signs while Don Brown was the DC at Michigan, because Michigan only had one person signing the defense, and Don Brown knew exactly what they were going to do, and Urban Meyer knew exactly what Don Brown was going to do, because the guy was an open book. He was basically inviting other teams to do that to him. And Urban Meyer was the only one who could take advantage. Credit to Urban Meyer. I just dragged him through the mud a whole bunch because he doesn't seem like that great of a person. He's certainly a hypocrite, but he's a really brilliant football mind. Number 2, purpose of the purpose of the in-person scouting rule. NCAA said rule was originally adopted as a cost-saving measure. They also said rule protects honesty, integrity, and fair play. How? So the fallacy is that they're shifting the goalposts. Yeah. So originally it was just because, they actually even talked about it back in 1999, getting rid of that particular rule, because they said that prior to that, it was in place because certain teams couldn't afford to go on the road and steal each other's signs. Because back then, they didn't have television. They didn't have YouTube. They couldn't just go on YouTube and say, what are Ohio State's signs? And boom, there they are. We live in an amazing world. Anyway, they didn't have smartphones, they didn't have Google, they didn't have ChatGPT saying, hey, what's the sign for pass? Spoiler alert, it's this. No, really, this used to be one of Michigan's signs for pass. I saw David Cohn do it on the sideline one time. I'm pretty sure it was Cohn. Anyway, it was a cost-saving measure. But now all of a sudden, and I'll make this point in a second actually, now all of a sudden, when it's down to the NCAA having to save face, it's suddenly about the integrity, honesty, and fair play of the game. Or is it really that you just wanted to make something up because you wanted to get Jim Harbaugh out of the game? Selective precedent. The NCAA said similar scouting cases, Baylor 2016, Utah 2003 were level 3/minor, but in this case declared it level 1, unprecedented severity. Fallacy, special pleading. Is that actually a fallacy? I don't think it is, but in any case, yeah. So they said that these similar scouting cases, which admittedly I don't know anything about, were level 3. But for some reason, this scouting case is the be-all, end-all of integrity in the game. I honestly think it's shifting goalposts again. Like, Michigan is held to a higher standard than Baylor and Utah, but also Baylor and Utah, those don't make any sense either, because as long as it was just the signs, I don't know if they were in-person scouting, like actually watching them run plays at practice or something. I think that's still against the rules. But in terms of ending up with each other's signs, if that's all they ended up with, then these are nothing situations as well. Number 4, evidence standard. The NCAA said, must rely on credible and sufficient information, but also said missing evidence, phone, hard drives, text equals inference of guilt. Not only that, but they admitted to not having any evidence of anything connecting Jim Harbaugh and the rest of Michigan's football program to what Connor Stalions was doing. And then they also said that Connor Stalions threw his phone and his hard drive into the lake. They said that Connor Stalions actually said that to them. But here's the thing. Even if Connor Stalions did say that to him, first off, I would say that is an incredible own goal. That is a self-owned. Stalions should not have said that. Because, frankly, even if he did have the signs on a hard drive, on his phone, smashed into pieces at the bottom of the pond, in the end, what does he have? The signs. Again, that is it. He still only has the signs. It just, with him smashing his phone and throwing it into a pond, looks really bad. So if anything, at worst, it's a self-own. It just makes him look bad. But they still don't actually have any evidence. And they say that Stalions said that he disposed of the evidence, but until they produce a video of him saying this, or Stalions himself comes out with a signed document that says, I said this, there's still no evidence, not legally speaking. Now, there may be a few trustworthy people at the NCAA that if you knew them personally and they said, oh yeah, I heard Connor Stalions said that. Well, great. Is that going to hold up in a court of law? No, because it's your word against theirs. It's the NCAA's word against Stalions. If they don't have definitive proof that this happened, all Stalions has to do in court is say, I didn't say that. And if the NCAA can't prove it, it's over. Number 5, excuse me. Confidential sources. The bylaw says confidential source info cannot be used to support allegations. But the NCAA relied on leads documents originating from a confidential source without disclosure. Fallacy, hidden premises, poisoning the well. This is going to need a sip of water. Yeah, the NCAA has gotten, we still don't know who the private investigative firm was. And they did declare, we do know for a fact that they got information from that private investigative firm. Okay, so they're hiding the identity of that firm. We know that they're hiding things about their sources. We know that there was a mole inside of Michigan. We still don't know who that mole is. This is all a part of why Michigan is appealing. Michigan is appealing because they want full discovery. Because according to Isaiah Hull, Michigan believes that they have a lot of evidence that's not only going to redeem them in the court of law. They're going to have stuff on, some say Ohio State, but at least a lot of evidence to suggest that the NCAA didn't provide Michigan with due process here. But then you get into this argument. Did the NCAA have to provide due process? Because technically, the NCAA is not actually a legal entity. They're not a public entity. They're not, an actual police force, if you will. They're not an enforcement. I mean, they're supposed to be an enforcement wing, but the problem is that they have no actual legal jurisdiction. That's why when they got, Sharon Moore on the issue of non-compliance, because he deleted his text messages, even though he got them back and they found out there was nothing incriminating, and he deleted his text messages before the investigation even started. I mean, that right there is ridiculous in of itself. But then also they got him on non-compliance because he wasn't able to provide those stuff, and because a bunch of people said that they weren't going to give the NCAA their personal phones. The NCAA doesn't have any legal jurisdiction to the private property of private citizens. So, of course they're not going to hand over their phones. I wouldn't. But then the NCAA can just say, oh, that's non-compliance. Here's a harsher penalty for you. That's ridiculous. That is so subjective. Number 6, compliance efforts. The NCAA said Michigan's compliance officer, quote, did everything she could, end quote, and was, quote, well respected, end quote. But also said Michigan failed to monitor and lacked a culture of compliance. There's a double standard here. Yeah, so there is a double standard. I've talked before on the channel about how Michigan has been at odds with their own administration. The football program, the athletic department as a whole, has been at odds with Michigan administration. Michigan administration doesn't really like the fact that they've got athletics and that athletics is kind of the front door to the university. But it is what it is because Michigan administration are all elitists. They all want to pretend that they're, the next Harvard or Oxford. And Michigan is one of the best universities in the world. I couldn't get into it, and I tried. I got stuck with Western. I like Western. It was a good school, and a good program that I went to as well. But they're a good school, and I don't understand why they can't stop for a second and be like, hey, we're just as smart as the Oxfordians, if you will, or the Harvardians. Makes them sound like they're cheese. Why isn't Harvard's mascot cheese? They could have called themselves the Harvardians. Anyway, but they're so ashamed of the fact that they have athletics weighing down their academic standards. And, oh, look at us. We're Michigan. We're the highest of the academy. We're elites, and we help solve the world's problems. Well, you do, but we can also play football. That's okay. Everybody's allowed to have fun every once in a while. But Michigan football has been at odds with their own administration. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if Michigan's compliance officer did everything she could in the eyes of the NCAA, but then they looked at Jim Harbaugh and said, oh, you guys are uncompliant. If Jim Harbaugh not handing over his personal cell phone to an organization that has no legal jurisdiction to it is called non-compliance, then you can't argue with it because it's subjective at that point. The NCAA can just say whatever they want at that point. They can define whatever they want as non-compliance. And the compliance officer at the school could, for all she wants to say, she could say, I know, he needs to hand over his phone. Jim Harbaugh, hand over your phone. Jim Harbaugh says, no, well, I tried. I mean, the NCAA can then say that she did her job while also saying Jim Harbaugh, did a bad job. But at the same time, Michigan has only just now started to put together a unified message on this. So it honestly wouldn't surprise me at all to know that, the NCAA said the compliance officer herself did everything that she could, but Michigan in general lacked a culture of compliance. Although they do say Michigan lacked if they're referring to the school as a whole, then yes, that is a logical fallacy. But honestly, this wouldn't surprise me, but for a different reason. I think that the NCAA is the subjectivity of it, as I've said, multiple times at this point, is just you can't follow subjective rules at that point because the goalposts shift, like we talked about before. In short, the NCAA punished Michigan heavily while claiming certainty where they admitted uncertainty, redefining the rule's purpose, ignoring precedent, using missing evidence as proof, relying on undisclosed sources, praising compliance staff while still charging institutional failure. Yep, I agree with all of that. Justin Spiro, on the other hand, who is losing it. He's losing it, guys. We all need to worry about Justin Spiro. He says, I love this bit. Quote, we threw the evidence in a pond. Also, there's no evidence. Good stuff. Funny thing is, there was more than sufficient evidence for a much harsher penalty, even without calling in the dive team. Imagine if 4 hard drives and a cell phone weren't destroyed. Yeah, so here's the thing. He's completely wrong here. All right. We threw the evidence in a pond. Also, there's no evidence. There's no evidence that Connor Stalions threw anything in a pond other than the NCAA says that Connor Stalions said he did. But again, they need to prove that he said that. Again, if they go to a court of law and they say, well, he said this, the judge is going to look at Connor. Did you say that? No. NCAA, what's your proof he said this? Yeah, get out. They're going to laugh you out of the court, buddy. So the NCAA at this point needs to prove that they have evidence of there being no evidence, basically. The funny thing is there was more than sufficient evidence for a much harsher penalty. No, there wasn't. There just wasn't. They even said that there wasn't. They said that they didn't have enough evidence to support a harsher penalty or at least they didn't have any evidence to connect Jim Harbaugh and the overall Michigan program, just Connor Stallions. And they also said, literally, they said that the scheme provided Michigan with a competitive advantage, but the scope of which, the true scope of which and scale of which will never be known. So they've literally said, we think they did something wrong. We don't know what, and we don't know how bad, but we have so much evidence, but none of it ties back to Jim Harbaugh. But, they definitely did something. Like, there's a whole lot of like, well, do you have it or not? Well, we have it for sure, and it's bad, but it's not like we wanted to, they didn't want to punish the current players. So, obviously it's not that bad, but it is bad. It is really bad. Sure. It's bad. I don't care. There were a couple of comments that I wanted. Yeah. So actually, Clifford, my dad, the other host on this channel, comes in with a good point here. He says, "You're missing the point, Justin. If the NCAA had sufficient evidence for a harsher penalty, why not give a harsher penalty? It's like when Bart Simpson sees an acrobat do amazing stunts and says, I could do that, I just don't want to. The NCAA doesn't have sufficient evidence." So the NCAA, that's why I'm saying that this whole thing is rather toothless. Like the NCAA coming out and saying, oh, we have all this evidence and we could have given them a harsher punishment, but, we just didn't want to. Like, I'm sorry, if you actually think that the program in its entirety has this culture of non-compliance and cheating, then you have to come down on them for that. You have to give them a postseason ban. I don't care if it's new players. Those players will transfer and go somewhere else. The coaches will all get fired and go somewhere else. The administration needs to, from the top down. I mean, that would be a systemic issue at Michigan that the administration would need to take care of. The crappy thing for Michigan is, in that case, the administration would all too happily say, well, we're going to take our lumps because we are good people. We are virtuous people, and we will spank ourselves for this. We are bad. We're very, very bad people. Because that's what they would do, is act all sanctimonious about it. But either way, this is literally the NCAA. Yeah, we have enough evidence, but we don't want to punish because, but we totally could if we wanted to. Well, then you should have. Because now you've set the precedent that other schools can do this thing that you said was really, really bad, knowing that they're not going to get punished for it. At least not that bad. In any case, I want to see, there was more to this. Okay, so Imenitor. Okay, they literally ignored their own rules and said as much in their effed up decision. They allowed the cheaters to rob a bank and keep the money. No justice. That's not at all. That's not at all what happened. But we're going to move on from that. Actually, we're probably not, because we are going to get to Feedback Friday here. There's our back end of the channel if you wanted to see it, which are basically all comments about what happened. So we'll go through these for a few minutes here, and then we'll call it a Friday and get to our weekend. Why Idian Peng? I have no idea how to say your name, dude. I'm sorry. They should give back the Toledo Strip as punishment. Yeah, because Ohio State, that was on my rumors of an Ohio State spy swirl video. Yeah, they should give us back to... Nah, we don't want Toledo. Well, unless we get Cedar Point, too. Was that a part of the Strip? I don't think it was, but that would be cool. I'd take it at that point. As Merce says, Lanning has been... This is on our Oregon football's 2024 season, a look back video. Lanning has been a head coach for 3 years. We all know the playoff setup was a joke and really benefited the teams that played at home in the opening round. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Dan Lanning got absolutely screwed over by having to play Ohio State a second time. And as I've said multiple times, Ohio State had an incredible run in the playoffs, and that's amazing. But they really shouldn't have been in the playoffs. And that's not their fault. It's the CFP's fault. As an Oregon, Casa de Bajas, wow. As an Oregon fan, I found this video very entertaining. Awesome, thank you. Marcus, the Humble, says, you didn't mention how Oregon rallied Michigan and watched all the fans leave early like predicted. Railed Michigan, sorry. Duh? Why would we talk bad about Michigan on this channel? We're homers. Oh, Hoseman88 says, Michigan... Naughty use of language. Michigan cheated and paid off the NCAA investigator. Are you kidding me? Stop making things up about Ohio State, idiot. I'm going to respond to this in real time. There we go. That's my response. All right. Thanks for helping us out with the algorithm there, buddy. Let's get to a few more of those. Enzo Moresi MJ8BC said OSU and Ryan Day better hope the info about their actions driving the NCAA stupidity doesn't get both spicy and juicy. Yes, they better hope so. Yeah, I mean, I went over a lot of rumors in that video, and they are just rumors. Do I actually believe that Ohio State had a mole at Michigan? Not until there's evidence available. I can tell you there are a lot of coincidences, but until there's evidence connecting all those coincidences together, which Michigan says they have, we'll see. GG Dope, go blue, baby. Go blue. Benjamin Stock, entertaining video, my guy. Put some more hate on them buck nuts next video, though. Yeah, we're gonna do that. They've been Ohio State fans need to be brought down a rung. I think some of them, not all of them. Thunderous Sooner 527, Michigan Cheaterines. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Michigan Cheaterines. Yeah, you tried though. I appreciate the try. Let's see. John Castle 318. Great video. Subscribed. Oh, thank you. Although I disagree about Dan Lanning. He will without a doubt bring a title to the team, and then SEC kids who haven't seen their team get one in decades will shut up. I think the problem with Oregon more than anything is Will Stein. Will Stein is too conservative. Guy has regularly had some of the best QBs and receivers in the country, only to run one of the most safe playbooks I've seen. Oregon, see Oregon use on offense. Traitorous Chip Kelly and his nut boys prove this in the Rose Bowl. Throw it downfield. Yeah, I don't know a lot about Oregon offensively. I mean, I know that Ohio State had their number in the Rose Bowl, that's for sure. And it seemed like Oregon really kind of played neutered ball there, but that's neutered ball. I didn't even mean to make that joke. That's funny. Spygate. Lila Delp says Spygate. Oh, let's get to a couple more here. Let's see. That's about that. Oh, this is about there we go. All right. Donnie Henry 4105 says, keep reaching, LOL. I will. Every time I need something from the top shelf, I will reach for it. Valiant Effort 531 says, if they made them vacate wins, they wouldn't have affected the current players, but they didn't want to do that. Yeah, actually, that's a good point, too. They said that they didn't want to vacate wins because they didn't want to harm the current players. Well, that doesn't really harm the current players, does it? I mean, it just harms the previous players who won the Natty. Oh, let's get to, I don't know, one or two more here. I'm at 28 minutes. Let's get to one more. CLB... actually two more. I like this next one too. CLB 1026 says, when Coach Moore deleted whatever was on the phone, there was no investigation going on yet. Therefore, there should not have been any type of punishment concerning that. Yeah, completely agree. Again, like I said, the NCAA is very subjective about this. What they deem as non-compliance is based purely on their own definition of it, which can change whenever it suits them, which, according to Ryan McCulloch here, based on his notes he took of the letter, seems like they're changing their definitions a lot, moving the goalpost, as he said. Random Reels test. As an M fan, I'd have to say the investigation into advanced scouting wasn't based on a lie. It's pretty clear from the evidence Stallions was engaged in an advanced scouting scheme, though it has been proven Partridge was lied on, which is a separate issue. That's true. He was lied about and exonerated by the NCAA, so that's good. That said, I've always believed the origins of Cheeseburger Gate and Sign Gate were likely some nefarious orchestration coming out of Columbus. YouTube is rife with videos taken by fans in attendance at games. I could see an amateur who appears to be spying more than enjoying a game standing out, but someone recording a game from the stands wouldn't necessarily stand out such that an organic investigation would occur. Wouldn't surprise me in the least if OSU is behind this. And I mean, that is one of the rumors, is that Ohio State had a mole at Michigan. The mole, this Joey Velasquez guy, Again, this is just a rumor. There's no actual firm evidence behind it. But the rumor is that this Joey Velasquez guy then transferred to Ohio State. And while he was at Michigan, he told Ohio State, hey, look, they've got this whole sign stealing thing going on. Because reportedly he had asked to join Connor Stellion's inner ring because they have players looking at the other side of the field trying to, decipher what the plays are and then call out their plays to their own players. Apparently he was rejected from this little club that they have. And the rumor is that he was upset about that. And so had been delivering information to Ohio State, whether or not he was upset about that. And that was the reason why he was delivering information. Don't know. But the rumor is that he was delivering information to Ohio State, who had then brought in a private investigative firm, who then brought information to the NCAA. Those are the rumors. There are a lot of coincidences that kind of align those rumors. But until there is any firm evidence, I don't believe it. Not yet. We'll just have to wait and see. Would it surprise me? No. No, actually, I think it would be. I think it would surprise me, actually. Although there are a lot of coincidences with the fact that a PI firm was brought in, and Ryan Day's brother just happens to own a PI firm or work at a PI firm, that this Joey Velasquez guy seems to be, it's very coincidental that he seems to be the one in question here, and he's also the one who transferred to Ohio State. Although the fact that he transferred to Ohio State might have been what put him on everybody's radar, but, it's not unheard of that Michigan players or Ohio State players transfer from one to the other. So, these things happen. But until there's evidence, not going to make any firm claims yet. But wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, that's going to do it for Feedback Friday. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section. I'm not going to say that I'm done talking about this because it's kind of taking some interesting turns, kind of turning into a spy story. It's kind of neat, actually. Again, I don't want anything crappy to come out about Ohio State because I want the game to be just a nice, good, clean rivalry between the two schools. I mean, Michigan's been beating Ohio State without Ohio State shooting themselves in the foot this whole time anyway. So, it would really kind of be funny if Ohio State was behind this, but I don't necessarily want it to happen because I really like where we are in the rivalry right now. Michigan winning 4 straight, likely 5 this year, probably 6 next year because Ryan Day's going to get fired. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget, we go live every Wednesday night at 8:30. Also, if you're a member or if you're not a member and would like to become a member, it's only $1. But we are hosting the members-only fantasy football league. There is still time to join, but the last day to join is Thursday. We are having our draft next Thursday, the 28th, August 28th, 2025, in the year of our Lord. We are having the draft at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time that night. So that is the last literal second that you can join is 8:29 p.m. I guess last minute. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.